The kind little girl agreed to the homeless man's request to lead the way. Then she was dragged to an abandoned factory and tortured for several hours. With the last bit of will, she called the police. When the police arrived, they were all shocked by the scene at that time. When the parents learned the bad news, they collapsed on the spot. Amy was rushed to the operating room with extremely serious injuries. There was no intact part of her body. Her pelvis was fractured and her organs were damaged. The doctor informed that if the damaged organs were not removed in time, it would be life-threatening. If Amy had an operation, she would need an excretion belt for life. In order for his daughter to survive, the father chose the operation with great pain. After Amy woke up, she was worried that the murderer would hurt other classmates. She hoped that the police could catch the murderer as soon as possible. The father came to the police station to ask why the police hadn't caught the murderer yet. The police had fingerprint evidence, but they needed the person involved to identify the suspect before they could convict him. At the suggestion of the female police officer, the father invited a child psychologist. When she saw the portrait of the murderer, Amy closed her eyes in fear. After counseling, Amy bravely identified the suspect. The police immediately arrested the murderer, and their story was also reported. Every reporter wanted to get the first-hand news, and reporters flocked to the scene. In order to prevent the child from being hurt again, the parents had to move to another ward. The reporter still found them. The father had no choice but to run away with his daughter in his arms. The excrement belt was damaged during the escape. The father panicked. When he was helping Amy sort out her excrement, the father's rough movements evoked her horrible memories, causing her daughter to cry heartbreakingly. The father felt even more guilty. From then on, Amy refused to contact the outside world. She wrapped herself in a quilt every day, did not respond to anyone, and was afraid of contacting outsiders, especially men. Even her closest father did not dare to approach. Finally, the day of the trial came. The father went there with a heavy heart. At the trial, the murderer insisted that he was drunk. He did not remember what happened that day and made excuses for the fingerprints and footprints at the scene. Because he refused to confess, the court temporarily detained him for insufficient evidence. The lawyer hoped that Amy would attend the second trial. Because the suspect insisted that he was not in his right mind, the court would only sentence him to 10 or 8 years at most. The father did not want his daughter to be hurt again, so he went to the detention center alone to plead for mercy. But the murderer not only refused to admit his crime, but also threatened his father. At night, Amy heard the discussion between her parents. Smart Amy decided to take the initiative to stand up. She was worried that if the other party was not tried, her father would lose his mind. In preparation, in the lawyer's words, the young Amy honestly answered that she smelled a strong smell of alcohol on the murderer. The other lawyer used this as evidence to prove that the suspect was indeed drunk. The judge finally sentenced, because the suspect committed the crime while in a state of unconsciousness. According to Korean law, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, and the victim's application for compensation was rejected. Hearing the verdict, the father was desperate and wanted to die together. But at the critical moment, the girl knelt down and held her father.